is something that you cannot prove, but you just believe, which is an untrue. It's an untrue explanation of the word belief. And if I was to look at the word belief and what it is, and to say that it's something that cannot be proven but people accept, then this is to actually say that the people that believe are people that are unintelligent or that follow things without proof. And if I come to that conclusion, then obviously, as you would find the sentiment with atheists, where they will tell you, are you still one of those people that actually still believes in God? And I would accept their sentiment based on this explanation, based on this definition. If the definition of belief is that, then yes, you would be petty to believe in God. And likewise, you will find this with the other sects and believers, other sects, of Ahlul Amma, when they confront the believers, where we used to visit the Messenger of God, they would say, why do you turn and face the grave? The Prophet is dead and he does not hear you. And in one case where one of them held out a subha and said, Ya Muhammad, if you're alive and you can hear me, take this subha. And he said, see, he didn't take it, so therefore he's not there. So one of the believers was standing there and he had a pen, I think, or a maswak in his pocket. He lifted it up and he said, Ya Allah, if you're there, take this maswak or take this pen. And the pen was still there. So he said, then God's not there either. Based on your silly argument, this is the way that I can come to a conclusion. But when it comes to al-Iman, and specifically when Allah speaks in the Quran, and He speaks about ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ, being ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ in some understandings or interpretations is the Quran, in others, in narrations, it is Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam called him, the animated book of God, meaning the Quran in action. So he says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ Amir al-Mu'mineen, لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. There is no doubt that Amir al-Mu'mineen is a guide for those that guard against evil, al-Muttaqin. Who are they? The first thing that's mentioned before anything is الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. What is this ghaib? Is the ghaib in the belief of God or belief in God? No, everyone believes in the Creator, whether they accept it or they don't. Many years ago, I'm talking over 20 years ago, when we used to, back in the days before any of the social media platforms existed, we used to go on religious forums and debate. And sometimes you debate on the forums that were placed by MSN, or you know what I mean, that was for Channel 9 and that. So you would sit there and debate with people. One of the things that they would bring across, where they would push you and they would say that, why do you still believe in God? Why do you still? And then I would respond by saying, if you don't believe in God, why are you wasting your time on the internet to convince me not to believe? See, when I argue against you, I got a lot of benefits. Benefit number one is I strengthen my belief, which is the strongest benefit. I said, benefit number two is if I convince you that God exists and you become a believer, then I've made a lifetime investment for the rest of your life. Every prayer you do, every fast you do, every good action you do, I have a share. Not only that, furthermore, everyone that you have an effect on, you have a share. I was once in Tempe with one of the members of our community, And this guy was one of the people that had been inflicted with the disease of gambling. We were standing there and I was having a talk with him. And he said, Allah yal'an fulan, from the community also. I said, why? He said, he was the first person that taught me how to slap. And I don't mean slapping like Ben Baba when he slapped his missus. I'm talking about slapping as in the pokie machines. He said, he's the one that taught me. I said, Ya subhanallah. This person gets the sin every time you gamble. And every time you've taught someone buys a multi or someone does something like that, he incurs that sin. And the sin upon the sin upon the sin, the one that taught you, for the day of judgment, he'll be in his grave. At first he's copying a jab to the head, then he gets an uppercut, then he gets a baton over the head. Thing after thing, every time someone new joins the gambling because of his teaching. Likewise with prayers and religion, the person I have an effect upon, the person that I affect will become like this. So this is why I come here and I discuss with you. That's my benefit. I said, furthermore, you're doing it for no benefit. And he said, yes, I am benefiting. I said, what do you benefit? He said, the less religion they have, the further we will progress as a society. I said, even with that, you're wrong. On the $100 bill, the US $100 bill, is I think only two of the American currency don't have presidents on them. All the rest have presidents. I think the two that aren't presidents, Thomas Hamilton, and there's I think Thomas Hamilton's on the $10, and there's Benjamin Franklin. He's not a president. But Benjamin Franklin's on the 100. That's why they call hundreds Benjamins. Benjamin Franklin has a famous statement that he has made. He says, man is so evil with religion, imagine without religion. Yani, if you look at religion, نوعا ما, it makes quyud for us. It makes us limit. Sometimes, you'll do a few things. People that do one or two haram or one or two bad things, but they all have a border. They say, lahonu bas. I won't go further than this. Why? Because religion, if you never notice, you'll see a Muslim, he'll do a lot of bad things, but he won't eat pork. He still has that limitation there. There's some limitation. But imagine if I have no limitations, I'll do everything. There's nothing where I'll stop myself. There's nothing where I will say no. And this is not only for Muslims, it's even for Christians or people that have some kind of a religion. They still have some kind of a boundary. So I said to him, your argument that religion doesn't allow for progression, on the contrary, even your members of society or your leaders, the people you look up to, state this statement. And then he said, but these people, the forefathers, the founding fathers of the United States, were Christians. That was his argument. And I said, that's good you've said that, because the founding fathers of science in the Western world were Christians. So why do you accept the science, but you don't accept the legislation that's been bound by these Christians? In fact, the law that we use today, even though they call Australia a secular government, Australian law is based on Judeo-Christian law. If you go to the Supreme Court of the United States of America, you will find 3 figures are engraved on the court. Look it up, you want to Google it, you'll see Jesus, Moses, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, because they say they are the ones that brought together the laws of the Supreme Court, or what we come together for. They're from them. They are the originators of this. So the laws that we follow, the laws that we are bound by in this country, are where they have been deduced, common law has been deduced from religious law originally. This is where, and they've added bits and dribs and drabs here and there, but that's where it comes from. Now I took him one step further, and what was that? I said, you too believe in God. He said, of course I don't. I said, yes you do. And I give him the argument. I've mentioned this argument before. I don't know if you. I said, do you hate the Easter Bunny? He said, no. Do you hate Santa Claus? Do you hate any villain? Do you hate Lex Luthor, Thanos? Do you hate these people? No. Why? Because they don't exist. They don't exist, so you don't hate them. But you hate God. If God was a figment of your imagination, if God was surreal, if God did not exist, you wouldn't hate him. You don't hate something that doesn't exist. So you, by constantly, if you see them, they reiterate that they hate God. This establishes their belief in the existence of a creator. But what is this iman bil ghaib if everyone does concede that there is a God? Al-iman bil ghaib, al-iman bil imam al-hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi. Sallu ala Muhammad wa alayhi. And it's a true belief. And this is the belief that they're talking about. يؤمنون بالغيب يؤمنون بالإمام الغائب. Because if you look, the horizon ahead, everything looks bleak. Look at the world. Look at the world 16 months ago, they made a statement that they were going to starve, that they said we would starve the people of Gaza if the world wouldn't go against us. You heard, I don't know if anyone saw that statement. Someone tweeted yesterday or the day before that they made this statement 16 months ago, and they found out that the world isn't against them if they do it. Because you see people make statements, but reality, what has anyone done to prevent the starvation that's taken place? I mean, the people that are able to do something, the people with the power. And don't find it, people find this tragic. Once again, it's history repeating itself. Those that were around in the 1990s, if you want to look up what Saddam did to the marsh Arabs, look that up. Where he cut off the marshes, and this is where the beginning of civilization was. If anyone studied ancient history, if you look at the ancient Mesopotamia, the civilization was there where the marshes were. This is where the civilization was birthed according to historians. However, there he had cut off and starved the people. I remember at the time they had imagery of them, and they were skin and bone. They were dropping dead out of starvation, and the whole world was blindfolded. No one cared. They only decided to get rid of Saddam when they knew, not because of weapons, they knew that the Shia were on the verge of rising in the early 2000s, and he would be toppled. So when they saw that this was the moment, if they don't step in, they will lose the opportunity that they have, they did. So you look in the future, you look at the horizon, you see the future is bleak. But then you look at the believers and you see they're steadfast. They're firm in their belief. What is it that makes the believer so firm? What is it that makes the believer stand tall and remain in the position that they are, even up to now? Like you imagine the believers today, they've lost a lot of their, if not all of their commanders. Every day, how many martyrs are killed? Every day. Why are they still strong? What makes them strong? What keeps them strong? Their belief in the future. That's why the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam says the best of deeds is intidar al-faraj, is waiting for the relief. The relief is not like when we think the relief of Imam al-Hujjah. It's not, sometimes people they say, all right, when there's happy days, people say, yeah, everything's good, I'm happy. No. Intidar al-Faraj. Imagine we were in the golden era. Imagine we're living in an era where there is peace across the earth, people are happy, things are working out. It still will not be even a thing worth comparing with how the world will be under the command of Al-Hujjah ibn al-Hasan. And this is the whole concept of this intidar al-Faraj. It's not only waiting for the Imam, it's not only anticipating the Imam, but it is the anticipation and the preparation that this can come at any moment. That any moment the Imam could rise, am I ready for him? Am I going to be someone that accepts him? But what is al-Faraj? Look at it. You read a story and it says, and they lived happily ever after. The real happily ever after. Al-Faraj is comfort. It's like, how we have, when I say Faraj, you've heard the word Ghaith. When you see the word Ghaith, if you were to get the definition of it in English, they'll write rain. No, it's better than rain. Al-Ghaith is the rainfall that comes after a drought. Have you ever watched those Animal Planet or Discovery? Those shows where the animals, where you see the crocodiles and the hippos are left in the final muddy, and the mud's dried up, the animals are about to drop dead, and you look at the Serengeti usually watching, and all of a sudden, this storm hits the Serengeti. It hits so hard, the rain, this is Ghaith. Why? Because it's the rain that rescues. Al-Faraj is the happiness after sorrow. It is the happiness after hardship. It's the happiness after suffering. It is that happily ever after that we are looking for. It is that happy outcome. It is that relaxation. It is that relief. So when he says to the Imam, when the Imam's asked, فَأَيُّ الْأَعْمَالِ أَحَبُّ إِلَى اللَّهِ, what is the most beloved action to Allah Azza wa Jal? He says, intidar al-Faraj. So not only is it the best deed, it's the most beloved deed of God. The Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam says, أفضل العبادة انتظار al-Faraj. That awaiting, that preparation, that anticipation for your Imam. When I say preparation, I don't mean preparing. The Imam doesn't need from you. It's like saying, I'm going to build this. No. Anticipation, the Imam needs. What does the Imam need? Do you think the Imam needs your latest technology? The Imam wants a pure heart. Because the pure heart is more powerful than anything. Because if I have a pure heart, a contrite heart, a heart that's subservient to God, this can never be overcome. You notice your enemy. One of the things they have most difficulty with, they say we can't fight a people that have no issue with death. See, the thing that they make a mistake is they think we have a morbid fascination with death. No. We're okay with death because God offers a challenge to the chosen people. The day of Jum'ah this morning, and the people that read Surah Al-Jum'ah. يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت. In other words, God is establishing something for us here. If you think that you are the chosen people, then you تمنوا الموت, meaning what? Meaning wish for death. Be ready for the death because you want to return to your Creator. So in other words, the ones that are awliya lillah, من دون الناس يتمنون الموت, that they want death. In other words, they want to be with their Creator. Doesn't mean they go out of their way to get killed, no. But they are okay with that because eventually that's where they're going. And that's where they want to be. So how can I deal with a people that this is their logic, this is the way that they think? That I want to be with my Creator. If you look, it's not where they're running to death. Imam Hussein alayhi salam establishes this, where he says to his enemy, if you have no religion, Ya Shi'at al Abi Sufyan, in lam yakun lakum deen, if you do not have religion, he says, then be free men, let us go. And the Imam tells him, you don't need to kill us, let us go. Not because the Imam deterred from death. No, but the mu'min's got to protect himself. But the Imam said this is the option. However, before he came towards Karbala, he mentions that he's longing for death, to be with his forefathers. He says he's what? He says like ishtiyaq Yaqub ila Yusuf. That I long, you know, these people before they're martyred, they long to see the ones before them. Why? Like Yaqub longed to see Yusuf. And if I ask you as a believer, knowing that Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam said, Man yamut yarani, whoever dies sees me. When you are told, how many people have booked to go to Arba'een? On their way going to Arba'een to visit the grave of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the grave of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhima. Imagine to see the presence in the flesh of Ali ibn Abi Talib before you. Of course you would long for this. Of course this is the biggest gift that anyone can give you. So they do have this longing. In fact, the messenger of God says, Afdalul ibadah, the best worship is intidar al-farash. Now, the thing is that you need to understand, patience is difficult. It's not sabr mor. When we say sabr mor, it's bitter. Patience is very bitter. Honestly, I was watching a video this morning. I swear to you, this video, I think I cried 3 times. Every time I relayed this, I'm not going to go over this video again. But every time I said the story to someone, I cried. It was that difficult. But if you want to look it up, it's a US Marine telling the story of a youth that's come to get, the aid. I don't want to go into it. It's very macabre for you to even look at this, read the story, and the ending. And there's no ending that you can even imagine. I don't even want to talk about this. But you look at this, it's so bitter to be patient. Saab. And every day, even before, I remember during the previous wars, for example, during Harb Tammuz, probably I knew 1 or 2 or 3 martyrs maximum. The Syrian encounter with the Daesh, I knew a few. This is the first war where I know at least over 50 people, and I'm not using any hyperbole, and I could ask everyone that they know personally that were martyred. How many people did they know? Sahwalala. It's a different thing. It's very bitter. It's very difficult. However, the Imam says something that allows you to understand this. This narration's on Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He says, Inna subur. That we are subur, meaning that we are patient. We are the patient about the Imam. Inna subur. Then he says, وَشِيعَتُنَا أَصْبَرُ مِنَّا. Allahu Akbar. He says, we are patient, but our followers are more patient than what we are. This is a humongous hadith. Why? Why does he say this? He says because we are patient about what? What we know. And now what do they know? Okay, what do they know? Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam says, وَلَوْ كُشِفَ لِي الْغِطَاء. So you know when you die, may Allah give you a long life in His service, but when you die and the ghita, the veil is removed, Allah says we remove the veil and then your sight at this time will be piercing. You'll be able to see everything. What the reality of everything is. The Imam says, once this veil has been removed from me, just to give you perspective, sometimes, for example, I can tell you, you see smoke somewhere, you say there's a fire there. You get closer, you actually see the fire. But if you feel the warmth or you get burnt, you have more certainty than when you had when you saw the smoke. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam says, if the veil is removed, because the mu'min, Allah says in the Quran, الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ, dhan, when we say dhan, we're talking about a believer has somewhere in the 65 to 70% range of belief, and it goes up till he gets to yaqeen. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, there's levels of yaqeen as well. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, if the veil was removed, I would not even increase in the slightest of yaqeen. I wouldn't even increase in yaqeen. I'm certain. This is why the Imam says, we are patient over what we know. They are patient over what they don't know. We have ilm of this. We have absolute knowledge. We have absolutely not even a sliver of a doubt. Nothing whatsoever. Even to the point, the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, just to give you, this is understanding for who you are, the people that are present today. He says, Ya laytani, he's sitting with his companions, he says, Ya laytani, qad laqaytu ikhwani. He says, I wish I may, or I am, and most certainly he's saying this, and he really wants this. He says, only if I could meet my brothers. So the companions say, Ya Rasulullah, are we not your brothers? We are not your brothers. And he says, they said, who are these brothers? We're not them. He says, they are alladhina yu'minuna bil-ghayb. This is a proof that that verse is speaking about Imam Sahib al-Amr. Because those around him, how many of them, they turned from the Imam that was present? الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. He said it 3 times. That they are the ones that believe in the unseen. The believer in the unseen, which is Imam Sahib al-Amr, is the brother of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. To that point. Because you, the people that are present, nor have you seen your Imam ever. And you love your Imam and believe in your Imam, you are people that are the brothers of the Messenger of God. Now, the Imam just, in one of the letters that he sends, he says that we have not neglected you. Now people might sit there and think, all right, what do you mean by the Imam hasn't neglected us? A lot of people say we're suffering. We're suffering. How is it that we haven't been neglected? Allah, from the beginning of time, the mu'min has suffered. At the beginning of time, the mu'mineen have been killed. The beginning of the time. But the thing is, it's like when the verse of the Quran says that Allah has not made a sabil, a way for the unbeliever over the believer. One person came up to Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida and said to him, how is it that Allah says in the Quran that the unbeliever has no way over the believer, and we always lose everything, at the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Do you know what they used to say to Amir al-Mu'mineen? They used to say as if the dunya was created for Banu Umayyah. Everything works for them. Everything works for Banu Umayyah. And you think time Amir al-Mu'mineen, all his leaders were killed. Malik al-Ashtar was poisoned. They couldn't beat him in the battle. Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr was cooked inside a donkey. They put him inside the belly, humiliating deaths. And they cooked him alive. One after the other. If you look at the companions of Imam Ali, that was slaughtered. And Amir al-Mu'mineen was killed in the masjid. So how is it that we have this? The Imam then explained what the verse means. He says, لَيْسَ لِلْكَافِرِ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِ حُجَّةٌ. That the unbeliever never has an argument or a proof against the believer. Your argument's always the strongest. No one will defeat your argument. Your proof is the strongest. So much so that your enemy's proof has no bearing, no weight. So we have no doubt. When we talk about our religion, we are so firm. You go up to one Catholic, he became a Muslim. This was at the time of, it's a book that I read this when I was younger. It was back in those days where they used to translate the Arabic to English, and if you got a book that was written in English, it was awesome, because it wasn't, I'm not smashing Ansariyan publications, but their translations are horrific. Like they butcher the English language. But if you got a book that was written in English, there was one that was at the time of Sheikh Muhammad Jawad Shrara, rahmatullah alayhi. Anyone heard of him? He's basically the Sheikh that established Dearborn community. You see the Dearborn community in Michigan? He established them. He was the one that went to the United States of America, established community, and he has a discussion with a Catholic professor. And the Catholic professor says something, and you'll find it. He said that any time we would ask the priest about something, he would say, just believe. Don't ask questions, just believe. And this is an insult to human beings' intelligence. Just believe, don't ask, don't research. Why? Because we don't have a strong argument. That's why just believe. Even the other sects of Islam, they do the same. I remember there's a video, you can look this up. The sheikh from the other sect, he goes, Ya Muslimun. This is what he gets up. He goes, La, he says, do not watch any of these Shia channels. Laysa lana siyana. He says, we don't have ala al-rawafid. He says, we have no way in being able to argue or any way to facilitate ourselves or organize ourselves or debate against these Shia. We can't defeat them. In fact, in their books, they will tell you it's haram to study the history of the Sahaba. Have you heard this? If you mention, they go, oh, you can't talk about the history of the Sahaba. This person killed that person. This person defeated that person. This person did that. Let it go. Don't talk about the Sahaba. Nowhere in the world, except with the followers of Ahl al-Bayt, there's open discussions, open engagements. If you go to the Hawza al-Almiyyah, the Islamic seminaries, you will find the marja or the mujtahid that is teaching Bahad Kharij. You'll see the students, they're arguing the points with him. And they debate them. And if they debate them to the point, my father, Allah Yarhamah, once told me, we were sitting down in Bahath of Sayyid Abu Qasim al-Khu'i, and he said, there was a young Sayyid with us. His name was Sayyid Yusuf Ibrahim, he was from Aineta. He said, Sayyid al-Khu'i said something, and he said to Sayyid al-Khu'i said something, and he corrected him. He said the next day Sayyid al-Khu'i came, and he said, what? He says, where is Hada Sayyid al-Lubnani? Where is this Lubnani Sayyid? Where is he? Because he wasn't there at the next day. He said he was right with this point. Where do you get this in any other sect? A'udhu billah. A'udhu billah, because his head is going to hit through the ceiling. Our ulama, they're known for what? Because they want to be. Tijani in his book Thumma Ihtadayt, he says when he sat with Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khu'i rahmatullah alayh, he said that Sayyid Abul Qasim was sitting on the floor with the students, and he said to him, my father is the imam of my village, of our village. He sits high up and he looks down upon everyone. He says, you are supposed to be Za'im al-Ta'ifi, like he was the creme de la creme. He was the number one marja at the time. He said, look where you're sitting. He said, hakadha. He said, this is the way our imams used to sit. You go look at the narrations. They used to say when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam entered the masjid, you could not tell him apart from the other people. Did you know that? He'd sit with them, normal. He wasn't, walks in, he didn't walk in with an entourage. An entourage, someone walks in. You ever seen, no offense to anyone that's in any medical professional, but you ever seen those consultant surgeons when they walk in and they've got all their young doctors with them, they're all like clinging on to them as they walk in. This is our consultant pediatrician, and he'll walk in and he'll just say something, and there's all these people clinging onto him. They come in with this entourage. I don't mean it sometimes that's the way they learn, I'm not saying, but to come in with a boom, to come in, let everyone, as the Lebanese say, Shufini ya Munira. I come out and I got to pose and let the whole world see what I'm doing. To come in like that, no. The marja was like this, and this is what brought people to this point. So, the Imam said, had we neglected you? He says, وَلَوْلَا ذَلِكَ, if we are protecting you, لَنَزَلَ بِكُمُ الْأَوَاء وَاصْطَلَمَكُمُ الْأَعْدَاء. He says, لَنَزَلَ بِكُمُ الْلَأْوَاء. And لَأْوَاء meaning hardships. وَاصْطَلَمَكُمُ الْأَعْدَاء. Stalamakum means you would have been eradicated, completely destroyed. But if you take a look, and I really wanted to leave this point. It's very important to emphasize this. A lot of you are younger than me. Just to give you an idea, when I was around during the times where, because most people here are Lebanese, the time when we were occupied, the whole of Lebanon had been occupied the whole of where we live, until all the Diya and the Junub were occupied. If anyone came up to any of us and told us that Israel was going to leave, no one would believe. Why? Because Israel had shown they don't budge. In fact, they take more land. They never leave. Okay? I was in Lebanon in 2000, and I think I left 2 weeks before Israel retreated. Now, people were saying they might retreat because they had killed A'il Hashim at the time, that they might retreat, but no one believed they would, because it is Israel. They never do. And when they did, the people were that overcome with joy. They were celebrating in the streets. Why? Because they never believed this would happen. Forward 6 years. Harab Tammuz. First 2 weeks, the people that remember, and I want to see the people that are living in a delusional world. They say, oh, we were always on top. No. First 2 weeks, everyone thought we were finished. Go ask the people that have good memories. First 2 weeks, everyone thought we're destroyed. We have been annihilated. The way that they smashed, no one could believe. Then once again, Allah Azza wa Jal. This is the presence of Imam Sahib Zaman. Once again, the believers were given victory. Likewise today, you know how it looks so bleak? And it looks like there's no light ahead. Have a look. This is where the Imam comes into fact. He says, had we neglected you, you would be eradicated. As much as you see it looks bleak, This is where the Imam, and when you reach that point where you think it's all over, there's nothing left, you will see the light. This is, imagine when it comes as a whole for the hereafter, for the dhuhr. If these are just glimpses of what the dhuhr is like this. Now, but what makes us so resilient? Look at history. Historically, no race has been brought to the brink of annihilation more than us. And if you look now, you think the whole world is, we're talking about everybody. You notice that they were more celebrating the deaths of our leaders more than they were celebrating the victories or the strikes on the enemy. You remember this? This is how the world's always been. There was a time during Banu Umayyah where Amir al-Mu'mineen was being cursed on the pulpit. And Muawiyah was saying, خُذُوهُمْ بِالظَّنَّ وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ بِالتُّهْمَةِ. He says, take the Rawafid. He was telling them to take them with suspicion. In other words, if they had an issue with someone, they say he's a Rafidi. They arrest him. And then he says, وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ بِالتُّهْمَةِ. It means make an accusation so you can kill them. Make a way for you to kill them. Banu al-Abbas massacred the Shia. Harun al-Abbasi killed so many of the Shia to the point where the Shia would not even say who his father was. So they wouldn't know he's Shia. He says, Ani Majhul, I don't know who my father is. Just to escape the massacre. Yet you look throughout history, we are the most sought after, the most killed of people, yet we remain. This is the protection of the Imam Sahib al-Amr. But the thing is, how do I strengthen this hope and this belief with the Imam? Within myself. One of the biggest problems is the Imam does not become, obviously I'm preaching to the choir here. People that turn up here, the people are people that your focal point is Imam Sahib al-Zaman. But this is where you talk to people that don't turn up to centers, that don't have an affiliation. How do they make the focal point? The focal point to put the Imam in your life is, Alhamdulillah, you all read Dua Allahumma kulli waliyika al-hujjatul hasan. You have a lot of centers that have, I think one of the biggest ones, I think, is in Auburn, where they have Dua Nudba on Fridays, and it's packed. That's one of the biggest. You have sessions where people sit and read Dua Nudba, Dua al-Ahad in the morning. One thing where you constantly keep a relationship with the Imam is when you give sadaqah, give it for the safety of the Imam. It's another way to establish your relationship with the Imam. Another thing is, sometimes when you do the adha, the qurban, or any time you make a sacrifice, make one for the Imam Sahib Zaman. So once I establish this relationship where he's constantly in my life, then you'll sit there and you'll talk. You talk to the Imam your problems. Because the Imam is present. The Imam looks over you. The Imam is a part of your life. And this is the belief in the ghaib. And if I do not have this, and I do not establish this, then what happens? Then I'm going to be one of these people that are miserable, that has no outlook into the future other than grief and destruction. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to hasten the reappearance of our Imam. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us patience and forbearance and to make us firm in our belief and grant us victory over our enemy. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us victory over all those that have oppressed us and all those that have associated in our oppression. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us the opportunity to serve our Master and to stand beneath His standard and be martyred by his side, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، ورحمة الله وبركاته والأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والأرواح موتانا جميعا، ولقضاء الحوائج وقبول الأعمال وشفاء المرضى وغفران الذنوب وتعجيل الفرج وحسن العاقبة. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.